Right, okay, let's do it then. Let's talk about the big three. So the first one we'll talk about is let's do the Royal Never Give Up, because if people don't know, obviously they won the spring split, but even then the context is, as I said, they did it by being the most clutch. Like realistically, FPX was the best team there. I even thought EDG was better than them. It's just that that's the way the playoffs went. Then this split, they basically were the ultimate commercial for that famous thing people always say in every region, which is that MSI does seem to like give a weird debuff to teams that go there, where you come back to your home region and everyone's just worse. Well, this was the ultimate example of it, because RNG basically lost to almost every single team, and then all of a sudden it's like they just turned it on, and then they won like 8 series in a row, something mental. So they actually now all of a sudden again are back in like contention, whereas most people up until, let's be real, like I'd say like 4 or 5 weeks ago, most people actually thought they weren't going to be relevant and wouldn't even go to Worlds. So right, how much of this actually do you think is the whole MSI thing, Clement? Like, because as I alluded to before, they already were maybe over peaking before they went to MSI.
I'll be honest. I think it's very little to do with MSI and much more to do with their base gameplay just not fitting in with the meta whatsoever. Like, I really have to give props to Tabe. I feel like he did a great job at changing the direction of RNG, and we'll go through the story again, but last time we talked about this, the main issues with RNG coming back into this was that Crying was not up to snuff in this new meta, where there were a lot of power picks like Viego and stuff like that. So the way they dealt with that is that they put him on 80 champions, bruisers like Renekton that weren't supposed to really lose the lane. They put him on Karma, and they tried to carry through bottom lane. They also had scaling junglers. They played a lot of Diana in that sort of a setup, and they actually went back to the old RNG. They didn't play around Xiaohu as much. They tried to hold steady, wait for team fights, and that was just not a viable strategy. Crying was still getting killed in the mid lane over and over again. It's just not an AD carry-centric meta at all. They wanted to play things like Kog'Maw and Tristana, and even brought out Xayah. That was actually a complete failure at the start of the split. But the way they changed it around to me was very impressive. I didn't think that they were able to make it, and they were actually 2 series away from just being mathematically eliminated from the playoffs before even the midway split. So that was how bad their situation was. And what they did change was Twisted Fate. That was a huge pickup into the team. And the importance about Twisted Fate is that they actually allowed Wei to go back into tempo champions. They didn't have to play an AP jungler. AP junglers typically come back online much later, so they aren't able to impact lanes as much. Instead, they just went with Crying. He's still not great in lane, by the way. He still has games where he just get completely blown out by the water. But at least Crying is able to roam around with the rest of the team. And another huge staple that they did also change was bot lane. Gala was never put onto hyper carries anymore. They're like, okay, this actually just does not work. He played 18 games of Varus after the midway point of split. He's basically a Varus one trick at this point. And the whole strategy for RNG is that they will use Varus, get a lane shoved up in the bottom side, and the entire team just moves top lane. They are the team that will very happily sack the entire bot lane tower to get the Herald and to get the full gold plate and first kill onto Xiaohu. And Xiaohu returned in kind with this strategy. The entire map forced their way into his side. He actually won, like, I think it was 3 best top laners back to back to back, and came out very close onto the MVP MVP for top lanes. And I still consider him just the best top laner in the entirety of the LPL. So RNG did a massive shift from their first 3 weeks with their strategy. They still have a very exposed composition. I think they're overly reliant on 2 picks, but because they have such good synergy and because they know their tools in the Twisted Fate and the way that Wei is going to connect with Xiaohu, not a lot of teams have been able to stop them even when they know it's coming.
I'm interested in that point you make there, because when you say that you actually do consider Xiaohu the best top laner, I would have said, like, that's one of the questions I had, is, like, to me, the interesting thing about RNG is, like, as you say, how set they are on the style of play they want to play, and it's obviously such a totally unique style. As you said, they will literally have 4 players go top lane. Like, there's not a joke. Yeah. Like, the entire map will be sacked to do it. Now, the interesting thing to me is, I would have said on paper, just talk about, like, raw skill, if we were looking at, like, a character's stats, you know, I'd have Naguri as the better top laner. The difference is, like, he's just a top laner in a team where he does certain things at a top lane. Like, the difference in RNG is that the whole team is Xiaohu. Like, they give him everything, but it also seems like it's not just raw skill. Like, he seems to be super smart for that role at the moment. Like, he knows exactly what to do.
Yeah, and I think at this point in League of Legends, top laner, a lot about is just how you play around that jungle support roam that we're talking about.
Right.
Jungle support roam is, throughout the entire split, the defining feature between the top teams and the bottom teams. A lot of the laning phases are actually very even. Like, you rarely see big laning leads, even from the top teams these days. If you look at FPX, they're consistently losing the bot lane, so, it doesn't really happen. But the real difference comes down to when your supporting cast can show up on time, and how familiar with you are with the tools that they're actually bringing. And I think that's where RNG actually wins out against most teams. What they do is that they will send Twisted Fate towards the top lane for a gank, and a lot of times they catch teams off by surprise because they're going into a 3v2 situation. The enemy team might know that something's coming, but they might only have 2 people there with the jungler there, and they don't expect the mid lane to be there so fast. And what happens in the mid lane instead is that they will preemptively roam the Varus pick and Ming towards the top side of the map to kind of fill in onto the bottom side. And they don't actually care if you take away the bot lane tower. And the great thing about this strategy is that they do a lot of setup from just the ban pick phase. They will always ban away things like Ziggs, and they will always ban away things like Thresh. And the reason they do that is because Thresh is very good at preventing first kills from happening. You take a dark passage, you just take someone away from the play, and they also take away Ziggs because it has a lot of wave clear potential, even against something like the Varus. So they have a very unique setup. They run this 100% of the time almost. Like, if you give it to them, they will just run this setup. But it's been so well honed and such a well-oiled machine that teams just have not been able to crack it. We've seen time and time again, like, teams preemptively get their support there. But what RNG are doing is that they're actually progressively moving their pieces even faster than their opposition.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.